My grandmother just passed away and she left me everything. We had a deep bond and she just thought that the stuff would be better with me, not my father, not my stepmom. There's a story I'm going to walk you through because this involves my evil stepmother. She thinks that she had a plan up her sleeves to take everything from me. Well, she's going to find out real quickly. She's dealing with someone she wished that she's never met. Sometimes extreme greed and impatience lead people to get themselves into some trouble. And that trouble has caused them for a bit of revenge. And I cannot help it because they chose it for themselves. Hi, my name's Adrian, I'm 26 and male, and I've lived with my dad Joseph and grandmother Martha ever since my mom passed away, when I was 15 years of age. Like every kid, I loved my mom, but unfortunately, the only thing I disliked inheriting from her was depression. Due to our family history, I was a bit lucky, since mine is hardly on the verge of moderation, so yes, it was mild. Grandma, who had a great bond with her daughter-in-law, also missed her often, but being well aware of her mental condition, she was very cautious with mine as well. She took great care of me and not let any long-term impact of trauma take a toll on my mental health. So, all thanks to my grandma, I survived the loss of my mother. In the 3 years since then, my life had been going all right until I met this woman, who was introduced to me by my dad as my other future stepmother. Her name was Julia, and my grandmother had an instant dislike for her. That also included me. She seemed friendly on the surface. Grandma objected to Dad marrying Julia, but I did not care as long as I had my grandma with me. I need no one as my mother figure. Dad could have anyone in his life as long as the person did not affect me. Well, I was wrong in assuming that because after Dad got married to her, things turned tense and bitter at home because of constant conflicts between Grandma and Julia. Not only that, she turned bitter towards me as well. To her, I'm being extra sensitive, and she often labels me as a crazy person who still has not learned to deal with his emotions even at this age. Grandma resents her for being insensitive towards my mental condition, as Julia does not consider depression a serious issue. Grandma tries to make her realize how terrible of a mother she is, or how she lacks motherhood, because it's quite evident that she never bothered to claim custody of her own kids when she got divorced 5 years ago. But Julia ends up picking fights with Grandma whenever Grandma makes a bit of sense. I've started to have anxiety issues due to her presence around me, and at times I lash out at her for misbehaving with Grandmother. I could not tolerate her being mistreated by anyone, not even my own father. Her outrageous, reckless attitude towards everyone made the environment at my home a little bit chaotic, with constant arguments and tantrums. Speaking of my dad, by the way, who was aloof about my existence and never bothered me, I sometimes retaliated with my passive-aggressive actions. Seeing my such behavior, Grandma, being extra cautious, insisted that I get myself a therapist. Though I did not need it, I did not object since, looking at her family history, I understood her concern. So, she hired a psychiatrist for me, and she found it was a mild one, as expected, but it might risk getting higher. Along with that, she just gave me antidepressants, but only for emergencies, so it was sheer luck that my grandma got me the therapy at the right time. And I was thankful that the condition, in terms of my mental health, were addressed seriously. That I passed high school with decent grades, and that made Grandma proud of me. I got admitted to college, where I met my best friend, Layla. She was a strong, bold girl with a kind heart. I started being happy whenever I was with her. She was the only person I was close to after my grandma who I could trust and rely upon. And I gradually stopped attending my therapy sessions. Grandma did not object much, considering I'm an adult and can make decisions for myself. Most of the time I was running errands, attending my classes, applying for part-time jobs and internships. I started spending less time at home. It's been another 5 years since I was excluded and never bothered except by my grandma. Even Dad turned a blind eye towards her, believing Julia was made a scapegoat by Grandma and the family, I was also given hints by Dad that I should leave, as Julia was having a hard time with my grandmother. I should think about Grandma's ill health conditions, but he fails to recognize that the credit goes to Julia. He suggested that I just go buy an apartment where we could live separately since Grandma's closer to me, and I could get her treated because Dad doesn't have much time to deal with Grandma on a regular basis. But I was hell-bent that the only person who would leave this place would be Julia, and Dad had a choice. This house belongs to Grandma, and only she can decide who gets to live in it. Because, well, for the last few months, Dad has been siding with Julia every time he leaves me and Grandma alone. He seems tense and lashes out at me more often. I said to him that he could leave us anytime he wished to. As I've said, he always had a choice. He turns quiet when I speak like that. I know he was happy to leave us at any time, but I wondered what was really stopping him. Every day I questioned what could be worse than this, and one day I realized how bad things can get. When I was at work, I received a call. It was my dad calling me to the hospital because Grandma suffered cardiac arrest. Anxiety crushed me at that moment, and I rushed to her. Fear of losing the only person I considered my mother was the worst thing I could feel. It felt the same as I lost my mother almost a decade ago. Grandma took Dad's promise that he would take care of me and advised me to visit my regular therapist. She was about to say more regarding the house, but her breath, it just gave way, and she was no longer here. I was absolutely devastated and my world shattered to pieces. Update number 1. Hey guys, I do have a sad update for all you, and well, things have become unusual, and I cannot figure out what I'm supposed to do. Layla had suggested that I go to a therapist, so she made me an appointment. But I skipped it since it was Grandmother's funeral. I still can't get used to the fact that she is not present in my life anymore. After Grandmother's death, I had a hard time dealing with life. Daily, menial tasks felt like a burden, and I've lost my job as well. Layla constantly tried to get in touch with me, but I ended up having an argument with her about her constant interference in my life. She was upset and stopped calling me. I felt bad, but was too fed up to deal with her. I started hating home, especially Dad and Julia for giving Grandma stress at the age that she could not handle it. I wanted them out of my sight. But before I could decide on my life ahead, things took a different turn. One day, I found Dad coming home late at night, drunk, with a group of people who were telling him something that seemed like an ultimatum or a last warning. I could not understand much, but the impact was things that have turned less bitter at home since then. Julia makes my favorite meals and talks to me nicely. She's been treating me better and stopped with her tantrums every day. I started being appreciative of the initiative to make efforts to improve things between us. But at times she was overdoing things, like trying to give me unnecessary compliments or suggestions without even asking, or I don't know, try asking me how I'm doing in my job or career every day. I believe that she might want to know more about me, but I did not feel comfortable enough to share things with her, and I did not understand why she was so clingy at times that I had to remind her that I needed my own space. And Dad, he sometimes behaves so strangely that he looks worried and tense. I sometimes ask my dad what happened or why Julia had become so considerate toward me. He replied to me that since Grandma had passed, life had become rough for him, and he was starting to appreciate what he had in life, especially me. Thus wants to make things better for me as promised to Grandmother. I was wondering if this was actually the reason. Because of so many years of getting mistreated, lashed on frequently, receiving tantrums, I was not used to this normal behavior. I got a little emotional, feeling that Dad might actually change after Grandma left us. Maybe he still wants me as his son. But the hope shattered soon, and I'm thankful for the fact that I saw the reality. One night, I woke up due to some noises. It was arguing, and a lot of talking and chit-chat. I got up to have a glass of water and saw Julia and Dad discussing rather arguing over something, and they stopped when they saw me, instantly almost. I could not listen to the entire thing to make sense of it, so I called Layla, just to tell her everything. But since it was late, she didn't answer, she was asleep, so I left her a text message. I was anxious the entire night, regretting my fight with her and also feeling the need to have the appointment earlier. The next morning, I asked them what went wrong. Julia seemed a little bit nervous for the first time, asking me if I've slept well, and I should not bother with petty things but rather focus on myself. She also showed her concern for my mental state, saying I should avoid overthinking things. Layla texted back, saying she went on a trip due to some work and could not reply as she was stuck in a slow fall, and the network was so darn weak. She would contact me ASAP, and I don't know, I just wished her a safe journey, and I thought of going with the flow, just to know what would happen next. I am relieved that I have her in my life. Update number 2. Hey guys, I need your suggestions on this one. Am I being pessimistic or too skeptical towards my own people? After 2 days, I waited for Layla to come back so that I could discuss what was happening around me. Getting impatient, I tried calling her once, and her voice was not clear and she could not understand much, but she only advised me to be patient and stay careful to get a better conclusion. And I thanked her. A few words were more than enough to think through the situation. I became observant of Julia because she was getting clingier. So I played smart, testing her patience, knowing Julia's reckless behavior and that she might drop her act of nice ties soon. I began to make more mess or nitpick the mistakes she's made, judge her cooking, and start getting bratty to know how far she could take it. On the other hand, Dad was also becoming more anxious with each passing day. One day, he would have a rough day, lashing out at Julia. She was almost on the verge of losing patience, and to accelerate it further, trying to act clumsy, I dropped her favorite vase, and there she lost it. She yelled at me and started throwing tantrums, saying that she was only tolerating me because Grandma had transferred her entire things under my name. Otherwise, she would not have thought twice before throwing me out of the house. Stunned by the revelation, I discovered the reason behind the change in her behavior. That confirmed my suspicion, and Dad tried to reason with me, even saying that Julia was hyper. That's why she uttered such things out of pure anger. I asked him if that was true, and he later confessed that she was partly right, as he had been getting some threats and ultimatums in the last few weeks since he was under a certain debt, and releasing that Grandma has given all her wealth and property under my name. Only I could help him with that. He said that he was aware that things were not the best in terms between us, but he had no malign intentions. He actually wanted to make things better ever since he had promised Grandma to take care of me. And he also expects me to help him out because honestly, why do I have as a family in my life after Grandma? Technically, no one, so what would I do with such a big house? Live and die alone? Well, he was not entirely wrong. Dad told me that he would not pressure me, not at all, and well, I just wanted to give it some thought. He also added that he would appreciate it if I would help him out with this. I asked for some time to think about it, and he was glad to give it, but he did not have much of it left. So he wanted to know my answer within a week, and I'm asking, what did you guys suggest? Update number 3. Hey guys, thanks for your suggestions. Well, it turned out I was right. Thinking about Dad's words was a little harsh, that I would be all alone because I had no one. This thought made me feel anxious about my situation. I wanted to have a talk with Layla. She did not pick up the call again, and she said that she was busy. My anxiety was worsening, and I thought of getting therapy since it's been so long. I haven't had a single session since Grandma passed. Getting therapy would also declutter the thoughts that have been racing through my mind. I tried calling the therapist, but when his secretary picked up, she hung up on me, saying that the doctor had handed over another case since I've been absent for a long time. So appointments are not available yet, and I can only get them after 3 weeks. I could not wait that long. Dad, looking at me getting tense, asked if he could offer some help. I didn't know if I could trust him, but I could trust the doctor, so I told him about the problem. He was more than eager to help me, considering that I was helping him with his debt, so that he could also return the favor to his son. And this was not a big deal for him. He called some people, pulled a few strings, and he came back in an hour and a half and told me that he had arranged a doctor. Well, so that he could come to the hospital, since the department head of the psychiatrist ward was his known acquaintance. It was easier for him to schedule my appointment. I thanked him, and he dropped me off at the hospital, and I got my session, and the session went nicely. But it tangled my mind further. The doctor stressed that being social, caring, and selfless to others might help me with my issues, and hinted at the importance of family. He gave me pills and said I needed to take them on the regular. He rejected the previous report, saying that I needed a regular visit for at least 4 to 5 days, so he could make new reports as the old ones were no longer reliable. When I came back home, I found Julia worried and feeling helpless, telling me that my dad was getting threats and that they had become more dangerous. She cried, saying that she had no one except him in her life. Dad told Julia not to give me anxiety right after attending the session and advised me to take my medicine like told. Julia and Dad kept reminding me to take them and take them and take them, and if I even get 5 minutes late to take them or tend to forget something, he questions me about how careless I am, how incapable I am of taking care of myself, and how I would survive the cruelty of the world with such a sensitive mental condition. He constantly keeps reminding me of my mother and grandma from time to time, how I lost them, and how it's hard when you have no one to rely on. On the other hand, my anxiety was worsening. I started to have panic attacks, and my day started looking concerned for me. Julia and my dad are constantly advising me that I need their 24-hour attention because of my mental condition. When I tried to contact Layla, she said that she wanted me to discuss everything alone since she doesn't trust my parents, so I planned to meet her after the doctor's appointment. And was my imagination getting wilder, or was I getting hallucinations that I was left all alone? I had no one, absolutely no one besides me. One day, I reached earlier than expected and found the doctor was already talking to Dad on the phone, giving him assurance that the work would be done in 1 to 2 days. When he found me present at the moment, he looked a little nervous. I asked if he was free so we could begin my session earlier. I've lost so much trust in him. My dad and Julie as well. I did not pay attention to his session and let him talk, and I lied about everything that he expected me to do so that he could hand over my reports earlier than expected, rather than waiting for a day or two. While on my way back home, I just wondered about my condition worsening, so I went ahead to Google my medicine. They were the ones that were causing me hallucinations and anxiety, and it slowly started making sense why Julia and Dad were becoming overly concerned with my timely consumption of my medicine, and why my anxiety was worsening instead of getting better. But if Dad had a talk with me about helping him with his debt already, then were they playing such games with me? Why? I instantly reached out to Layla and told her everything that I've discovered. She suggested that I come to her place, and I asked her where she had been for so long, and she told me the whole story about how she was stuck in the snow, then later found that she had to empty her apartment and had to find another room overnight, so she shifted here for the time being. And she introduced me to her roommate who was a lawyer named Mia. Seeing the opportunity, I shared everything with them. The lawyer suggested that I gather the proof of prescription and the will of my grandmother, where everything was named under me. After getting hold of evidence of their misdeeds, it would be better to confront them, and I understood the assignment and headed home. Julia and Dad waited for me, asking where I had been for so long. It took more than half an hour to reach them, so I told them that I went to meet Layla on my way. Julia and my dad disapproved of me visiting my friends. Well, I didn't bother to argue with them. I just shut the door and waited for them to go to sleep so I could proceed with my plan. It was midnight. I sneaked into Dad's studies room and found the papers of debt with contacts of his debtors. And the most important thing is the will, under my name, signed by Grandma. I got a hold of it, and all of a sudden the room was lit brightly and Dad was standing there questioning me about what I was doing. He found that I've taken the will, and I was caught red-handed and was ready to confront him. He told me to sign those papers and hand over the percentage of my share to him, but I refused. After being played upon, I did not want to help him with anything. Furious, he locked me inside his study. The next morning, he had a meeting with his lawyer and asked me to do the same thing again, or I would get nothing. But I was determined. He handed over the document to me, showing me that I was mentally unstable and had lost my right over the property that had been given to my grandmother. I was thrown out of the house. Oh, so now I understand how my defective mental condition is related to my ownership of property. Guys, I want them to be caught. I know I can go to the police, but I want them to be embarrassed for what they've done to me. Update number 4. Hey, I'm updating you after a week. I've had a foolproof plan, and I was looking forward to exposing them, so here's how it went. I was fuming with anger, blaming myself for being foolish to believe in them, not knowing where to go, and I head towards Layla for her roommate's suggestion. Mia. She suggested I get my diagnosis done with a genuine doctor, as written proof of my current mental condition. I reached another doctor, made an appointment, got my checkup done, and got my news report that declared I was on the wrong medication previously and was given antidepressants to heal the damage done. Also, the report stated that I was suffering from mild depression, but due to recent consumption of the wrong medicine, which had the opposite effect on me, it would take some time to get my health back to normal. I told Mia that my dad and stepmother tried to frame me as mentally unstable to get the entire estate under their control. So I filed a case against them for mental harassment, including manipulation through the doctors and medications. Also, to catch them red-handed and get a hold of my previous medical reports, I had to wait to meet them at the right moment. And that opportunity was coming the next evening, as Julia and Dad were organizing a party to celebrate their marriage anniversary. I made all the arrangements to get Layla into the party so she could get into my house to find the previous medical records and reports of the basis of which I had declared mentally unsound. By the time she gets a hold of the evidence, she'll call me to come in, and she will keep the camera ready to record Julia and Dad's interaction. As soon as she called me all prepared, I barged into the party, and my reckless and patient mother said the exact thing that was most expected. "How dare you come here when I was not invited when I was thrown out of the property 2 days ago?" Dad, drunk, made fun of me, saying psychos like me are not invited as they would just get all panicky. I belong in an asylum. They made the mistake of not getting admitted there, and, well, I saw Layla with a camera in her hand standing behind me recording everything. I replied to Dad that I had come to wish him a happy marriage with a gift. I opened the gates where he found his debtors standing in front of him. His hangover washed away in an instant, and I handed him the papers where I had charged him in the case of mental harassment with invading my property and throwing me out of my own house, along with the evidence as a statement that was recorded by Layla. At the court, they confessed that they've tried to manipulate me through the doctor that they had set up by appointing the one who would work for them, and he would get paid and promoted in return. When they found the older doctor had been handling another case, they took that as an opportunity and started giving the wrong medication with the help of a doctor. Also, when their plan leaked due to Julia's reckless behavior, they both tried to manipulate me while I was given time to think, as they did not want to risk my mind getting better. I was being kept deliberately away from my limited social circle so that I would feel isolated and not confide in others. Meanwhile, even if I ever changed my mind and manipulation did not work, they always had a backup plan to use my fake medical reports of my mental instability to take over my property. I realized why Grandma refused to give a single penny to Dad and Julia after going through a hellish experience. The doctor's license was canceled and Dad and Julia were sued, and property rights were handed back to me. Though this wasn't easy while suffering from constant anxiety and panic attacks, even hallucinations. With Layla's support and her roommate Mia, I would not be able to get justice, and I'm forever thankful for them. So this story was very deep. There was a lot to it, and I just honestly cannot believe how OP's father can treat his own kid. I mean, trying to steal everything from OP, trying to frame OP with the wrong medicine, making OP have even worse anxiety, deeper depression, and just going through a hellish time, all for the sake of inheritance and money, is absolutely absurd and wild. And I just can't help but think, what would the grandma do if she was still on this earth and she could witness the horrible things that her son was being a part of? It makes you wonder. Guys, let's discuss this story in the comment section down below. If you're new to the channel, my name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories every day. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll see you in the next one, but do remember one thing. You never know what someone's going through in life, so it's cool to be kind. I'll see you later. Peace.